I'm certain that there is something else that you're going to be doing. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Lipinski. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next one to recognize the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Larson.
I thank the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Lipinski, for organizing this hour and concur with my colleagues that an hour is not nearly enough to highlight the virtues and certainly the public service of our distinguished colleague, Jerry Costello. Jerry, as has already been said, and his lovely wife, Georgia, their beautiful family, we're all very happy and proud that he will be joined with them in whatever endeavor he does. We know he will bring the kind of energy, the kind of commitment, and the kind of integrity that he's brought to the floor of the House. Robert Remini, also from Illinois and a historian, has written a significant history about the House. And in his book, he talks about the character of the people that serve here. I'm proud to say that I've had the opportunity to serve with someone who is so genuine, who so cares deeply about this institution, his home state of Illinois, and the people he has served with. He does it the old-fashioned way, the Bill Lipinski way, with a handshake and a commitment, and always looking you directly in the eye. As Don Young from Alaska indicated, he also has the great capacity to reach across the aisle, understanding implicitly that things don't get done unless we're capable of working together. An incredible wry sense of humor, always sage advice, and an incredible understanding of politics, not only the local flavor of his great state of Illinois, but also the ebb and flow of business here on the floor of the House of Representatives. He is honored by his colleagues and respected not only for his political acumen, his professionalism, but most of all because of the integrity that he brings to this floor each and every day. He will be sorely missed. It's an honor to have served with him. I look forward to a continued relationship with this great man from Illinois, Jerry Costello. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Next, I want to recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay.
Let me thank my friend from Illinois for yielding, Mr. Lipinski, and let me say that, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor my great friend and colleague, the distinguished senior member from Illinois, Mr. Costello. Let me also mention that Mr. Costello served in previous Congresses with my father, so he was here when I got here. And our districts are just across the river from each other. He represents Southern Illinois, and I represent the city of St. Louis, the gateway to the west. As he prepares to retire at the conclusion of the 112th Congress, Congressman Costello has been a trusted friend and mentor to me for the last 12 years. When I first arrived as a freshman member to Congress in 2001, Congressman Costello was here to greet me and guide me along the right path. And over the years, I have continued to rely on the good advice and wise counsel. His departure is a great loss for the state of Illinois, the citizens of the 12th District, and the St. Louis regional delegation. For the last 24 years, Mr. Costello has been a tireless advocate for Southern Illinois and Metro East, and he has been a champion for rebuilding and enhancing our transportation infrastructure. The magnificent new Mississippi River Bridge that is currently under construction will be a powerful symbol of his legacy of leadership. Congressman Costello has also been the patron saint of Scott Air Force Base, the largest employer in Southern Illinois. Our region, and indeed our nation, are stronger because of his continuous efforts to preserve and expand this vital national defense asset. Mr. Speaker, I consider it a great blessing to have had the opportunity to serve with Congressman Costello and to call him my good friend. I honor him for his service to his state, the St. Louis region, and our nation, and I salute him on a remarkable congressional career, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Next, I want to recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
First, let me thank the gentleman, Mr. Lipinski, for organizing this opportunity to come to the floor today and recognize the remarkable achievements of our dear friend, my dear friend, Representative Jerry Costello. I want to thank Jerry, my friend and colleague, for his 24 years of remarkable, outstanding service to his district, to Illinois, and to the country. And although he's retiring at the end of this Congress, I know that his impact will be long-lasting. Since arriving in Congress in 1999, I have been very fortunate to have Jerry Costello to rely on for advice and guidance and support. And as you hear from one member after another who gets up and says the same thing, you can see how Jerry Costello has been a friend to so many on both sides of the aisle. When I came, he and then Representative Ray LaHood, now Secretary of Transportation, convened routine meetings of the Illinois House delegation to discuss how we could work together to meet the needs of our state. A fierce advocate for southwestern and southern Illinois, Jerry was eager to help all parts of the state to obtain federal assistance and meet the needs of our constituents. Our delegation may have had some disagreements on policy, but we were firmly united under Jerry's leadership in our desire to bring funding to Illinois to create jobs, improve access to health care, help farmers, and promote Illinois businesses. It wasn't until I was in Congress for a while longer that I realized that not every state delegation met in this manner. It was because of Jerry's leadership, his dedication to getting things done, and his ability to work in a bipartisan manner that the Illinois delegation could get together not just to talk, but to achieve concrete results. Throughout his career, Jerry has been a real workhorse. As senior member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and ranking Democrat on the Aviation Subcommittee, he has shaped transportation policy and is responsible for unprecedented improvements in aviation safety. He is a recognized expert on transportation issues, and he is known for his commitment to protecting the interests of travelers, riders, and passengers and the rights of transportation workers. He has brought his policy interests to other areas as well, from his role on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee to his interest in agriculture, education, and children. Jerry Costello is the go-to leader of the Illinois House delegation, and it is easy to see why. It is not just that he loves the state of Illinois and the House of Representatives. It is not just that he can put together strategies to pass legislation or bring federal assistance to his district. It is his entire being, a calm but determined demeanor, a common-sense approach to problem-solving, and a welcoming attitude for his beloved constituents and his colleagues. Throughout my time in Congress, Jerry has been generous in sharing with me his time and his talents, and for that I'm extremely grateful. I've also been so happy to get to know Jerry's wonderful wife, Georgia. Georgia is the president of Southwestern Illinois College and advocate for the Illinois Green Economy Network, and she also brings the spirit of public service to her work in improving the community. My dear friend Jerry, your record of accomplishment over the past 24 years is enormous. And while you may be retiring from the House of Representatives, I know that you and Georgia will continue to work to inspire and improve the lives of Illinoisans. I thank you for your friendship that I hope will endure, and for all that you have done for our great state. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Schakowsky, for your comments. And next I want to recognize a gentleman from Texas who Jerry and I both serve on Transportation Infrastructure and Science-Based Technology Committee with, and who's also the ranking member of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, Ms. A. Bernice Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lipinski, for reserving this hour, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to speak in honor of a very cherished colleague and a dear friend in the U.S. House of Representatives, Congressman Jerry Costello. After 24 years of dedicated service, is retiring. And that is a very tall order for me to accept, because I have served with him on both of his major committees from the time I have come to Congress 20 years ago. And he appears to be, starting this term, a part of a vanishing breed of people who came here to work across the aisles. When I think of Demi Duncan, when I think of Mr. Young of Alaska, when I think of LaHood, I think of the camaraderie that we have shared on the committees working together to get things done. And I look up, and many of them are leaving. It's so unfortunate that we're losing such a stellar example of the commitment needed to be an effective public servant. He began his public service at an early age, working in law enforcement while attending college. He has built his career on bipartisanship and dependability, and has always kept the needs of his constituents and the American people foremost in his mind and close to his heart. Congressman Costello is a devoted family man who treasures his wife Georgia and their 3 children and 8 grandchildren, and I have shared with Georgia and Lynn, Jimmy Duncan's wife, for trips around the world where we became almost like family. His companion has given Congressman a unique perspective, making him much more effective as a member of Congress. I remember one time we went on a trip, and at the last minute Georgia couldn't go, and we ended up being seatmates all the way. And he said at the end, "I enjoyed you being my seatmate, but you'll never be Georgia." And he was right. I've had the distinct pleasure of working closely with Congressman Costello on both the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and Science, Space, and Technology. As a matter of fact, I would not be ranking member had he chose to use his seniority to become the ranking member of Science, Space, and Technology. He's an effective legislator and has shown an unwavering commitment to furthering scientific research and building our nation's infrastructure. Having served both as chairman and ranking member on the Aviation Subcommittee with Congressman from Wisconsin, Petri, just like 2 brothers, they have been guests in my district where we did work together on a very bipartisan basis to improve the safety and innovation of the aviation industry. Mr. Speaker, the bonds that we form with our fellow colleagues in Congress are unlike anything else. You become closer in friendship, and you begin to see people as individuals This last 2 years, however, has not been the example that I lived with 18 years before that. Congressman Costello and I developed over the years a very special relationship. The House of Representatives is losing a distinguished colleague, and one of those from the old guard that we call the bipartisan focus on business people. I have immense respect for Congressman Costello, and I will miss him dearly. I wish him well, and I wish his family the best for future endeavors. And I do hope that this is not the last of the vanishing breed of the persons who came here to work to get things done and not be so partisan. I really will miss the camaraderie that we shared. Jimmy Duncan, Young, LaHood, all the people who can see beyond partisanship. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, I want to recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Altmaier.
I thank the gentleman from Illinois, and I too rise to pay tribute to our great colleague, Congressman Jerry Costello. And we spent a lot of time during this hour talking about what a great person Jerry Costello is, which is certainly true. He is a kind and decent man. He operates in a bipartisan manner, and he's a friend to nearly everybody in this institution. And we can continue and take the entire hour just talking about what a fine person Jerry Costello is. But when you look at the legislative record over the decades of service that he has offered to his constituency and to the country, there's a few things that stand out. Jerry Costello on the Transportation Committee has a long and lasting record of many achievements, but he also has a lot of things he's done back home that those of us in Washington maybe don't see every day. For example, when the Base Closing and Realignment Commission slated for closure a military base in Jerry's district, Jerry Costello did what is nearly impossible. He got the Realignment Commission to review the facts. He had that decision overturned, and he saved that military base and the thousands of jobs that go with it for his district. That's something that he can be lasting, that's a lasting achievement he can be proud of. When you look at things on the Transportation Committee that have lasting significance, changing the law to benefit all Americans. There was a tragic, terrible catastrophe, an air disaster in Buffalo several years ago, and Jerry Costello took the lead in this Congress and in this country in changing the laws dealing with pilot fatigue and the requirements for the pilots in the planes, and that is going to save lives around this country, and that is going to avert that type of disaster in the future, and that happened because of Jerry Costello's leadership. So, Mr. Speaker, when we think about the lasting contributions that Jerry Costello has, yes, many of them are personal. Many of them have to do with the relationships he built, the friendships that he will carry forward into his new career, but let's also remember the many significant legislative and achievements for his district that are unparalleled to anyone else in this institution. So, Jerry, we wish you the best. We're going to miss you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Altmaier. Next, I want to recognize the Democratic whip, gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer.
I want to thank my friend Congressman Lipinski for taking out this special order. For someone that has been regaled, as I understand it earlier before I came to the floor, by his colleagues who know him best. This is a body in which you get to know people. You get to know their character, their personality, their civility, their effectiveness, their work ethic, their patriotism, their willingness to work with others. On all those counts, all of his colleagues found Jerry Costello to be one of the best among them. Jerry Costello came to this Congress in the election of 1988. He has been my colleague for all the years that he served in this House. I was privileged to come just a few years before Jerry Costello was elected by the people of Illinois. He was elected by the people of Illinois after an extraordinary career early in life as a young man, not only attending to the court system of Illinois, but also as the county executive, the leader of one of the largest counties in Illinois. Chosen because of his judgment, chosen because of his good sense, his common sense, chosen because of his effectiveness as a representative of the people. There's not been a day that has gone by that I have served with Jerry Costello that I did not have all of those affirmations affirmed here in this House. And so I rise with my friend, Mr. Lipinski, to honor Jerry Costello. Now, we're going to have the opportunity of serving with Jerry Costello for another 3 months at least. And Jerry Costello is very much alive. This is not a eulogy. Jerry Costello is someone who is still a young man for whom I see a very bright future. In whatever endeavor he chooses to pursue, he will be successful. And with whomever he works, they will be advantaged. And whatever he does, I know that we're all going to stay in close touch with Jerry Costello. The preceding speaker, and I know Mr. Lipinski, whose dad before him, and he now serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, a critical committee of the Congress of the United States, one of the most important in terms of growing jobs and expanding our economy, because it invests in the infrastructure, which is the underpinnings of a growing economy. My friend Mr. Lipinski, who has fought so hard for legislation to expand manufacturing, a Make It in America agenda item, and focused on making sure that we had an infrastructure that supported manufacturing, the distribution of goods, and the goods, the transportation of goods to our shores to be sent abroad for purchase by our trading partners. Jerry Costello was part of the leadership of 2 of the major transportation bills that have passed this House in recent years, ensuring not only that Illinois received particular attention, but that America received particular attention, every part of this America, in the best traditions of a congressman coming, yes, and representing his district effectively, but understanding that his responsibility was to all of America. Jerry Costello has fulfilled that expectation with flying colors, great effectiveness. We're going to miss Jerry Costello, but I want to tell Jerry Costello, I hope he's listening, I want to tell him that we have a few days left to go, and I'm going to look forward to working with him. I'm hopeful that in the lame duck session we'll address one of the most vexing problems confronting this country, and that is getting us ourselves on a fiscally sustainable path. I expect Jerry Costello to be in the leadership of that effort, as he's been in the leadership of so many efforts. And again, Congressman Lipinski, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your service, for your commitment to the same kinds of things that Jerry Costello has been committed to in building up this country, in making sure that average working men and women had jobs, and that we expanded our economy by investing in our economy. So it's appropriate that you lead this special order on behalf of a kindred soul, Jerry Costello. You and he represent a real leadership on behalf of growth, jobs, and economic success in America. And so we thank Jerry Costello for his service, but we look forward to working with him in whatever capacity he chooses to follow in the years ahead. And I yield back my time to the gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoyer. I just want to wrap up here, continue on talking about Jerry. I know Jerry has been extremely popular among his constituents because he's a lifelong resident of the district and always has been focused on helping them. He was born in East St. Louis, Illinois, attended Assumption High School there, and later graduated from Southwestern Illinois College and Maryville University, just across the Mississippi River in St. Louis. After graduating with a bachelor's degree, Jerry worked in various positions in Southwestern Illinois, culminating with his election to the House of Representatives in August of 1988 in a special election. He was known then and is still known today as a person with that special ethic and earnestness to roll up his sleeves and get the job done. Since that time, his accomplishments have been numerous and outstanding. We've heard from many of our colleagues before this about some of his accomplishments, and I could spend hours staying up here listing them all. But some of his most important recent accomplishments include helping to pass 4 national highway investment bills, 7 Federal Aviation Administration bills, and helping secure funds for a new Mississippi River Bridge for the residents of Illinois and Missouri. He has a great reputation for delivering for his district. A couple of examples include helping prevent the closure of Scott Air Force Base, the largest employer in Illinois south of Springfield, and helping extend St. Louis's Metrolink to St. Clair County, providing public transportation to many thousands of people. He has received recognition as a leading advocate for farmers and for many other causes, including the arts and for multiple sclerosis. His dedication to an effective transportation network in the U.S. has remained steadfast throughout his career. As Mr. Altmaier has mentioned, a perfect example of this is his drafting and passing of the Pilot Training Improvement Act of 2009. In response to a tragic plane crash in 2009 in Buffalo, New York, that killed 51 due to lack of rest for the pilot, Jerry wrote a bill that made requirements for pilot rest and training much more stringent. This legislation has resulted in safer travel for millions of Americans. The legislation is a lasting reminder of the fine work Jerry has done while in Congress. During his time, Jerry has sat on positions of leadership as chairman of the House Aviation Subcommittee, on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, now serving as ranking member, as well as ranking member on the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics within the Science, Space and Technology Committee. He has always worked in a bipartisan manner on those committees, doing everything he could to make those committees work. I, in this legislative body, will miss Mr. Costello and the leadership he has provided, but we can all take comfort knowing that he will be able to spend more time with his wife, Georgia, who serves her community as the president of Southwestern Illinois College. Their 3 children, Jerry, Gina, and John Patrick, and their 8 grandchildren, Jay, Austin, Rory, Ireland, Jerry, Victoria, Georgia, and John Patrick. He will undoubtedly continue to serve his neighbors and all the residents of Southwest Illinois in his day-to-day activities. So please join me in honoring Jerry Costello for his tireless hard work, dedication, and skill serving the people of America and Illinois. I congratulate Jerry, thank him for all he has done for his constituents and for his nation. I thank you, Jerry, for your mentorship here in Congress, and I wish you the best as you retire from the House of Representatives. I know, as other speakers before me have said, Jerry is much too young to retire. I'm sure there are many great things that he will be doing, and he will always be remembered as a great man who served his country and served his constituents of Illinois. We will certainly miss him here, and we could certainly use more Jerry Costellos in this body. With that, I will yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Benechek, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. As many of you may know, before coming to Congress, I was a physician in northern Michigan for nearly 30 years. And tonight I want to spend a little time talking to you about health care, Medicare, the President's health care bill, and just health care in general. In practice, many of my patients were on Medicare, and I know how important medical care is to our seniors. It's an important part of their ability to take care of themselves as they get older. And really, the reason I'm here today is to explain that the GOP and the Republicans want to preserve Medicare for our current seniors and for the youth that are coming up, because right now, the way Medicare is organized, the trust fund will be out of money within 10 to 12 years. Different accountants have different numbers. But basically, unless we do something, we're going to run out of money. And we just don't want that to happen. I want to see people still have access to their care. And in discussing this issue, it seems as if we've been attacked for trying to end Medicare. But if you see that there's a problem with a system that is running out of money and you don't address it, that's just not right. The Doctors Caucus in the House is 18 physicians, nurses, and dentists that represent different areas of the country, and we have a good understanding of health care as it exists right now in America, and certainly there's problems with health care and access to it. I think that really the problem is that we have great health care in America. The problem is it's too expensive. And frankly, the President's health care bill makes it more difficult to keep Medicare viable. And those are a few of the things I want to talk to you about this evening, to just touch on to let you understand what I think about how the system is working and how we could improve it. I mean, I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's something that we need to discuss, and frankly, I just don't think that some of the people that have passed these laws in Congress really understood what they were doing. I mean, they admitted the fact that they passed the bill without really knowing what was in it. And I just don't think that's really a good idea. Well, what is really the problem with Medicare? The problem is that the population of our country is changing. There's more older citizens than there were. In other words, there's 10,000 new Medicare beneficiaries being added each day. Right now there's a little over 3 people who are paying into the system for every person that's collecting. Because of the large numbers of people that are being added to the rolls, within a few years there's only going to be 2 people paying in for each person collecting. And that creates a problem in the fact that there's not as many people paying in as are receiving benefits, and it just, with the cost of the health care going up, it just makes it a fiscal cliff. The other big problem that we see with the Medicare situation is the fact that the President's health care law, in order to pay for it, takes $700 billion out of Medicare. Well, that's a lot of money to take out of Medicare and to still expect it to provide care for our seniors, more and more of which are coming onto it every day. I mean, I think that there's certainly some waste, fraud, and abuse that can be eliminated, and that will help. But it's just not enough. We have to change the system, and the system that I think we should change to, frankly, is the system of Paul Ryan and Mr. Wyden of Idaho, who's thought together a program where we can put some changes for those people less than 55 that will allow them to choose between different private insurance plans similar to federal employees or members of Congress have. And these private plans would be inspected and reviewed by the government to be sure that they're adequate, and give people some flexibility in how they spend their money. I mean, one of the problems I see with Medicare is that the government ends up deciding how to spend the money rather than the patient. The patient, to me, is the one whose money it is. I mean, the people who are spending the money should be the ones who are deciding how it's spent, not some government person or bureaucrat in Washington. Let's talk. Show me the slide on the $700 billion. I just want to show people this slide that demonstrates what's happened to this money. Now, I represent the northern half of Michigan, and you know, we have many small towns and small hospitals in my district. You know, every little town has their community hospital, and you know, it's hours sometimes to the next facility. And this slide here shows the $716 billion coming out of the Medicare program. $294 billion of that money is payments to hospitals. So, you know, the President describes his Medicare cuts as, you know, cutting waste and overpayments to providers. Well, these hospitals are the ones that are providing the care. And as a doctor, I'd be a provider as well. But when you cut $294 billion from our local hospitals, I know, I served on the board of a hospital. Our hospitals are operating at a, you know, razor-thin profit margin. They have to make, you know, stay in the black, otherwise they go out of business. They can't make their payroll. We've recently had a hospital in our district go bankrupt because of problems with their payments from Medicare. This is going to continue to happen, you know, as we go forward if we allow this President's health care bill to continue. $156 billion is cut from Medicare Advantage. $111 billion to be cut by IPAB and other provisions. $66 billion cut from home health care agencies. $39 billion cut from skilled nursing. $33 billion from FFS Medicare providers, and $17 billion from hospice care. And these are crucial programs for our seniors. With more and more seniors coming out of the program, how are they going to be provided care with less money? I don't see it happening. What's going to happen is there are going to be fewer hospitals, fewer places for patients to get care. So it's going to be difficult in my district. We have to travel hundreds of miles to get seen. And I think it's pretty darn scary, to tell you the truth. Dr. Harris, another member of the Doctors Caucus, is here with us tonight. He's from Maryland, and he's an anesthesiologist. And
would the gentleman yield?
Yes, Dr. Harris.
If I can ask the gentleman to yield for a question, on those lists of those $716 billion that's basically going to be transferred from the Medicare program to pay for the President's new health care reform bill, that doesn't even include the over $300 billion in cuts to physician and provider payments for the next 10 years under the payment form. Is that correct?
That's right.
So it's in addition to those $700 billion, there's another $300 billion that's going to get cut from payments to providers. And here's the problem, and I think you know, the gentleman from Michigan points it out. Medicare is going broke. And it's going broke not only because $700 billion was taken out of it to pay for the President's Affordable Care Act, but another $300 billion are going to be taken out in the physician payment formula. Now, the CMS actuary, and that's the department that runs Medicare and Medicaid, actually projects that the Medicare program could be bankrupt as soon as 2016. 4 years from now, the Medicare program could be bankrupt. Now, I'm glad that as part of this November's elections, we're going to discuss the future of health care for our seniors, because it is time to say that the emperor has no clothes. Our seniors know it. They know that when they go, God forbid their physician retires, and they go to try and find another physician and they're on Medicare, they already know how hard it is to find a physician who can accept them, because the reimbursements are already so low. The payments to physicians are so low already, it's hard to find that primary care doctor. It's hard to find that specialist who needs to take care of you, whether it's for your blood pressure or your diabetes or whatever problem you have. And the problem is only going to get worse. Now, the President in his budget doesn't deal with it at all. He pretends that Medicare will go on forever and ever, just the way it is now. That's just not true. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid say it could go broke in as little as 4 years. The Medicare actuaries give it the longest lifetime, 10 more years. Well, Mr. Speaker, if you're 55 now, that means by the time you're 65, it's broke. If you're 61, according to the Centers for Medicare, it's broke by the time you reach age 65. And if you're on it now and you're 70, it could be broke by the time you're 74. So we have to stop pretending that the Medicare program is going to work forever the way it is now. It won't, because the President took $700 billion from it to pay for the Affordable Care Act. There is a scheduled cut to physician payments and to provider payments of over $300 billion over the next 10 years. And our seniors are already having problems finding those physicians. But in the Medicare costs, if we don't do anything right now, we don't deal with the program and adjust it for people who are younger. You know, I have a son who's 27 years old. He's an accountant. He knows numbers. He knows them backwards and forwards and up and down, better than math than I ever was. He's convinced he'll never see a Medicare program because he's seen the books. Medicare costs are projected to grow substantially from approximately 3.5% of our economy to 5.5% by our economy by 2035, and the President has no plan to pay for that growth. We know because of the maturing and retiring of the baby boom generation that this is coming. This is predictable. We can project this. We know that if we don't change the Medicare program to preserve it for future generations and to keep it for the current generation of Medicare recipients, it goes broke. And as I mentioned, the physician payment formula in Medicare needs to be fixed, or starting January 1st, payments to physicians and providers may go down 30%. Now, Mr. Speaker, if our seniors think it's hard to find someone to take care of them now on Medicare, what do they think it's going to be like when the government says to those physicians, we're going to pay you 30% less starting January 1st? And this is all scheduled to happen. The President has no plan. The President has suggested no ideas to Congress on how to deal with that. What we need is leadership on health care, and we're not getting it from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Already access is an issue because back in 2008, 12% of physicians has said they have to stop seeing Medicare patients, and we know now that a much larger number limit the number of Medicare patients they care for. Now, as the gentleman from Michigan knows, we didn't go to medical school to not take care of patients. We didn't go to medical school to have our staff answer a senior calling to say, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to take care of you. But that's exactly the position that the President's plan for Medicare is putting physicians and patients in right now. That's the sad fact. This emperor has no clothes. The Medicare program is on a path to bankruptcy, and there is no plan from the White House to solve that problem. It merely kicks the can down the road. We've heard a lot in the last few days and few weeks about Simpson-Bowles coming to the rescue. That's going to solve our fiscal problems. If we just adopt the Simpson-Bowles Commission, all our fiscal problems go away. Mr. Speaker, as you probably know, Simpson-Bowles decided not to do anything about Social Security and Medicare. Now, Social Security, it turns out, is pretty solvent. It's going to be there for at least another 20 years, giving us a fair amount of time to solve the problem for future generations. But again, the Center for Medicare says we may only have 4 years to solve the Medicare problem before it goes bankrupt. And if our seniors right now think they have problems now, getting their health care and finding those primary care doctors and those specialists to take care of them. Imagine when the program goes bankrupt. Now, we have a choice. We can deal with it, or we can kick the can down the road. I'm proud of Vice Presidential candidate, one of our colleagues, Mr. Ryan, who's decided that the time to kick the can down the road is over. It's time to tell our seniors and Americans what they suspect. We've been making promises we have no way of keeping. We have been spending money we don't have, and it has to stop. And as the gentleman from Michigan knows, we have some principles in our plan to deal with the bankruptcy of Medicare. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. So there are a couple of principles. The first principle is we don't change it for anyone over age 55. If you're in retirement or you're near retirement, you get to keep the very same program right now, but we deal with the fact that physician and provider pay would be cut January 1st. We solve that problem. We say you can't do that. That'll limit access, so we deal with that issue. We say you have to stop taking $700 billion from the program to transfer it to pay for the new President's health care reform, to cover Americans who don't have insurance now by taking it from Medicare patients who do have insurance. So the first principle, no one over age 55 is affected. The second principle is for those under age 55, Mr. Speaker, if they're listening now, the program is going to be bankrupt when you reach age 65 if we don't do something. So we're going to make some common sense adjustments. We're going to say that you should have access to the same kind of care congressmen and women have. A broad range of health care plans you can choose from with the guarantee that for at least two of those plans you will have 100% coverage. Look, we all turn on the TV, we hear the ads. Mr. Ryan's plan will cost $120,000 for every senior, or $200,000 in more costs. Here's the problem. People who made the ads didn't read the bill. The bill spells it out quite clearly. Our plan is that you'll have that seniors, again, people who age 55, when they reach age 65, will have a choice of plans just like we have here in Congress. The only difference is we have to pay a part of all our plans. They don't pay for the two lowest price plans. If they choose a plan with more options, they may pay something. But they will end up paying even less than they do now. That's our solution. Let market forces come in and control the cost of health care, control that growth in cost, and allow real coverage for our seniors, for our people age 55 when they reach age 65, and preserve it for future generations. So that my son, the accountant, can look at that plan and say, you know what? This balances. You don't have to borrow money from the Chinese to pay for this plan. We don't have to raise taxes to pay for this plan. We actually let market forces work, providing the same coverage that that people in Congress get, and it will work. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this tonight. I'm very glad that this November and in the months leading up to it, we'll have an honest, frank discussion with the American people about the future of health care. Future of health care for our seniors, preserving it, and the future of health care for everyone else under the President's Affordable Care Scheme, because we know there are problems with it. Americans understand that when you put the government in charge of something so vital and personal as health care, real problems can occur. And as the gentleman from Michigan has pointed out, we know those problems. They're predictable problems. A majority of Americans have figured it out. Poll after poll after poll says we should deal with the President's Health Care Reform Act by repealing it and replacing it, keeping elements that are good, You know, every American either has a pre-existing condition or will have one in their lifetime. Every American. So our plan will have to deal with it. And it does deal with it. And for those people who want to have their children on their policies up until age 25, our plan can deal with it and does deal with it. But we certainly don't need the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which the gentleman from Michigan is going to discuss, that is going to run health care for Medicare. We certainly don't need the Secretary of Health and Human Services prescribe what plans are going to cover what for every single American, whether you want it or not. You're paying for it in your plan, because we know that's only going to drive up the cost. So I'm glad we're going to have that discussion with the American people, because, Mr. Speaker, every American's health care is so important to them and their family. They deserve this discussion. They deserve the chance to go to the ballot box this November and make a choice about what their health care is going to look like in the future. And we're going to have a clear choice. It's going to be a government-run health care plan run by a bureaucrat where costs and access are controlled and rationed, or it's going to be one where the patient and their physician make the choice about their health care, with the government bureaucrat staying out of it where they belong. So I want to thank the gentleman from Michigan for yielding time, and I yield the time back.
Thank you. I truly appreciate my colleague from Maryland taking a little time to be with us tonight and give us his insight as a physician here on the floor. I'd like to say a few words about IPAB. This is the Independent Payment Advisory Board. This is the mechanism that Mr. Obama's health care plan has for controlling costs. And really what it is it's 15 appointed bureaucrats, each making $165,000 a year, with no congressional oversight, whose only purpose is to reduce Medicare spending. So if the Medicare budget goes up too much and is over the limit, these guys in Washington are going to decide what to cut. They're going to decide if, you know, you deserve a PSA prostate test, or you deserve a mammogram, or you deserve a colonoscopy. They're going to decide that they may not pay for that. I mean, if we don't act, this board could begin making this kind of decisions as soon as 2015. And denial of payment for care is going to really lead to denial of care for our patients and our seniors. I mean, I don't really think it's fair for these Washington bureaucrats who know nothing about the patient to be making these decisions. You know, I'm used to taking care of patients, and sometimes we have to make some really difficult decisions. But those decisions have been made between, you know, the physician, the patient, and the family, not some bureaucrat in Washington who doesn't know the patient, can't decide, you know, if this patient, you know, really qualifies for care and should not be denied. So I just think it's just so wrong to allow bureaucrats that don't know the patient to be making these decisions. And just want to make sure that people understand the seriousness of this. There's no appeal from this board. There's no getting somebody off of this board once they're appointed. It's really unbelievable. Tonight also I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleague from New York, a nurse, Miss Burkle of New York. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much to my friend and colleague from Michigan. Thank you for having this special order tonight. And I think it's so critical, Mr. Speaker, that when the Docs Caucus has this event, and the people who are speaking are people who are passionate about health care. And many of us actually came to Congress because we were so concerned regarding the Affordable Care Act. You know, I spent my life as a nurse and later on as an attorney who represented a large teaching hospital. And so I'm passionate about health care, and as my colleague before me mentioned, there's nothing more personal than one's health care. And this nation has the highest quality of health care, and we want to make sure we maintain the standard that we have. But I think I don't think anyone would disagree, Mr. Speaker, that this country needs health care reform. And while this law may have been the most well-intentioned, I disagreed with it philosophically when I decided to run for Congress. But now that I'm in Congress and I've had the opportunity to talk to so many folks in my district, this Affordable Care Act that was supposed to decrease the cost of health care and increase access for Americans is not going to do that. And let me just, if I could, talk just briefly about what's going on in my district. My district is heavy with eds and meds, we call it. We have a lot of hospitals in my district, and they're the major employers. Now, the hospitals have spoken to me. They're concerned because this Affordable Care Act, this Obamacare law, will decrease the amount of disproportionate share monies they give because they treat a population of patients who may not have insurance who are underinsured. So they're concerned about their fiscal, their financial integrity. Those are the hospitals. Those are providers. The Affordable Care Act doesn't address the SGR fix, the Medicare reimbursement for physicians. So I've got physicians who are concerned. It also creates a scenario where we will not have enough primary care physicians, internal medicine, psychiatry, those types of physicians who can even render the care. So the providers are concerned, the actual people and facilities who render the care. They're concerned that this law is going to adversely affect them. That's my first concern. My second concern are my seniors. And in all of this discussion and debate, I think the most disingenuous discussion that's going on out there is the denial as to what this law will do to seniors and their Medicare coverage. And I think my colleague ahead of me talked about the moral obligation we have to our seniors. We have a contract with them that when you retire, when you turn 65, Medicare, you've paid into it all your life, and you will be able to have that benefit. But this law, this Affordable Care Act, cuts Medicare by $716 billion. Now, there's no program in the world that will not be affected by the loss of that much funding. And the funding is being taken out of Medicare, and it's going to be used to fund the rest of the entitlement in this law. So seniors really need to understand the threat to Medicare as we know it is this Affordable Care Act. And it has changed Medicare as we know it for our seniors. And this law will affect everyone who's on Medicare. The discussion about the Ryan budget and the budget we passed out of the House, that discussion is only for those who are 54 and younger. So anyone who's 55 and above with a Republican proposal for Medicare can take a deep breath and they can say, my contract with this country, my benefit through Medicare will not be touched, and I can rely and count on that. That's a very important promise that we can make to our seniors. But this Affordable Care Act can't make that promise to our seniors because it is cutting Medicare. And as my colleague from Michigan talked about, this IPAB board will also affect the kinds of services that our seniors receive. And so it is every American, especially our seniors, should be concerned about this law that is in place that will go into effect in 2013 and 2014. So we've heard from the hospitals and the physicians they're not happy with this law. We've heard from the seniors they're not happy with this law. I hear from my businesses, my small businesses, those entities that we're trying to get this economy going, and they're concerned because they don't know how this law is going to affect them. They don't know whether or not they're going to have to pay the penalty or pay the tax. They're very concerned because of the uncertainty this creates in their businesses. And so they sit on cash and they don't invest and they don't hire. So my small businesses don't like this Affordable Care Act. Now, just recently, and we've had a lot of debate about the tax on small medical devices and that will occur to any small medical device producer in the country. Now, that's a niche sort of industry. It's one of the only sectors of the economy that has grown. It requires R&D, it requires innovation, it requires real creative production of small medical devices. Now, I have a world-known company right in my district, and on Monday of this week, they announced that they will cut 10% of their workforce, directly related to two things. The first is that 2.3% tax, excise tax, on small medical device producers. 10% of that workforce will be done away with because of this Affordable Care Act. And the other reason they're cutting their workforce is because of the tax and also because of the fact that with this Affordable Care Act, hospitals and physicians are not buying new equipment because they too are uncertain as to what the Affordable Care Act is going to do to them and their business. So they're not buying new equipment for their hospitals and their offices. So now we've got seniors, hospitals, physicians, small medical device companies, businesses, very concerned at how this law is going to affect them. The court ruled that it's a tax, and that's why it's constitutional. There's 21 new taxes in this Affordable Care Act. It's going to affect our jobs and our economy. It's going to affect our small businesses. It's not the right direction for this country, and only the practical listening to people over and over again in the district puts that out very, very clearly. And so it really, I think, the right thing to do for this nation and this House. I'm so proud we have voted to repeal this law twice. We also voted in June to repeal the tax on small medical devices. That's the right thing to do. The responsible thing to do is enact true health care reform that will really reduce the cost of health care, that will allow patients choice, that will allow them to cross state lines to buy their insurance. It will allow them to keep their insurance even if they lose their job. It will have tort reform in it and bring down the cost of health care. It will repeal this excise tax on small medical devices. It will keep the good pieces, and the two things I hear over and over again, pre-existing condition, and my colleague from Maryland mentioned it, pre-existing condition along with keeping your child on your plan until they're 26. And those two could certainly be incorporated in a new, truly reformative health care law in this nation. So I thank my colleague from Michigan for all of his good work, for his dedication to the health care profession. I'm proud to be a member of the Docs Caucus because we are a group of people who have committed our life to health care. We are passionate about making sure that the United States of America maintains its high quality of health care and also keeps costs and accessibility to the highest standard for the people who live in this country. I thank my colleague and I yield back my time.
I thank my colleague from New York for joining us this evening. I appreciate her insight. I just want to say a couple more things about this tax that she mentioned on medical device manufacturers. You know, in my district as well, we have a couple of companies that make the drills for